The Sawyer Mini is the most versatile personal filtration system available. It's a perfect solution for backpacking, hiking, hunting, fishing, scouting, international travel, and emergency preparedness. At a mere 2 ounces, the Mini fits in the palm of your hand and can filter up to 100,000 gallons of water from any freshwater lake, river, or stream. The Sawyer Mini has a 0.1 micron absolute pore size. It was tested to 10 million parts of bacteria and 1 million parts of protozoa without a single breakthrough. This is the highest level filters can be tested to, so we're confident these are the highest rates of filtration available.
And we're back. And for once, I'm not alone on Saturday night. Y'all must have been bad or something. Your wife's kicked you out.
You called in the cavalry. We finally showed up.
Oh, right on. So I got my co-host John to my, which side is that? To my left side. To your right side, our in-house 007 CIA operative, Jeff MD. And, geez, I'm trying to remember that actor's name in your picture there, S2, but it's escaping me right now. But
it's Armageddon is the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like that. Get off the nuclear warhead, kind of like Clint Eastwood saying, get off my lawn, just different.
Yeah.
Oh, right on. Okay. So the first chapter, actually, before I get into the first chapter, the conflicted question will be at the end of the episode, and the brief for this episode is already posted over on Patreon. So the first part of the video, or broadcast, I should say, for this evening, we're going to be discussing what's going on with Russia and missiles being fired and the potential for World War III to break out if calmer heads don't prevail. So let me pull up the first article of the night here. So this is on a British news site, the mirror.co.uk. And they, you know what, if you guys notice this, that this is a pretty liberal, website. The liberals love to use the word terrifying. It's in like so much of their copies. It's terrifying. Everything is terrifying. But anyway, this is what they're essentially referring to. And I'm going to go to S2 first, and then Jeff, and then John. But these are the times that they're saying this new Orchestrated missile, what its flying time is. And S2, my first question for you is that I've read some stuff that says these are hypersonic, and I've read other ones that say they're not hypersonic. And I've also seen ICBMs, and what was the other one? Something.
IRBM.
IRBM, yeah.
Intermediate range.
Okay.
Intermediate range ballistic missile.
Okay. So give us a little bit of clarity on this map, S2. The missiles, what they're carrying. One of y'all said that the ones that look like they have 6 warheads actually only have 2, maybe 4 dummies just for the press.
Well, the Kremlin actually had confirmed that it was an IRBM. That was the first thing. Secondly, there was also a hypersonic missile. So you don't need, if you're looking at this kind of a flight time right here, I don't see why you would waste a hypersonic missile for a 12 to 20 minute flight. That seems like a big waste to me. They also had warned the White House before they did it, so the White House was fully aware that was going to happen. So anyway, that's about all I have to say about that.
Okay. All right. Jeff, your thoughts on this map and the flight times?
Yeah, I mean, okay, hypersonic is, okay, all ICBMs are hypersonic. Hypersonic is Mach 5. Okay, if you go up into the atmosphere or up beyond the atmosphere and then come back down, when you're coming down, you're doing more than Mach 5. That's, what you think about a hypersonic missile is one that in level flight in the atmosphere can do Mach 5. Totally different thing.
Okay.
IRBMs, probably a lot of SRBMs, and definitely all ICBMs can do more than Mach 5. That is not a big deal. That is, that's hype. So these time frames don't mean squat. What's more important is launch detection and can you shoot them down? And THAAD, the the theater anti-ballistic missile system that we use. I don't know. I'm not an expert on THAAD, but it's designed to shoot down ICBMs, so it can probably shoot these things down too. To me, it's much ado about nothing. Can they get there? Absolutely, they can get there. Guess what? Ours can too. It takes 45 minutes for an ICBM launched from, North Dakota to hit Moscow. Well, if you're only a few hundred miles away, it's going to take a lot less time. That's not a big deal. That's not news. Now, what I saw when they launched into the ones they did over the weekend, they called an ICBM, which wasn't. The videos I saw, there were one where you saw 6 re-entries, because you can see the clouds flaring, and when they're coming down, they're doing Mach 6, Mach 7. The atmosphere around them is going to heat up and glow, but when they hit, I only saw 2 secondary explosions. I mean, secondary, you see them coming through, and then there was a light flash from the ground, which would indicate an explosion. So, and as we do with ours, we have dummy warheads, so that we'll send something up. There may be 10 warheads, only 2 of which are real, and the other 8 may be dummies, so that when they send up a missile to shoot it down, the missile doesn't know which one to go after. It's a diversion.
Oh, okay.
Another one I saw, well, that's because by treaty. I think a Trident missile can have 18 independently targeted warheads, but by treaty, we can only have, 6 or 8 warheads on it. But the other video I saw, there were it looked like a string of things coming down, which would indicate maybe cluster munitions. And if you're taking out a wide area, you want to take out runways and things like that, use cluster munitions. Doesn't have to be an ICBM, can be on damn near anything. I think what we saw here was a lot of people freaking out early without knowing what the hell they were talking about.
Okay.
So I would take all this with a huge grain of salt. Even the Russians came out and said, it's an IRBM. Well, we have those too. We've been using them for years. And technically, an ATACMS, at the long range ATACMS, is an IRBM.
Okay.
And we gave those to Ukraine months ago.
So before we go to John, quick question for you, Jeff. Is there any reason that they wouldn't be launched from where my cursor is, as opposed to way down in southeast Russia, like just to above, say, where it says 12 minutes there?
Well, they can be launched from anywhere.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just looking at the flight time. I mean, they could, in some instances, cut off over half the flight time, at least a third of the flight time. Just curious why they would show that from the other side of the country. That's all.
Well, that's really kind of Western Russia. Russia's a huge ass country. It's got 12 time zones. That may be that's where they're based. It'd be like saying, for us, Minot, North Dakota. But if it's a mobile system and it's a new system, they're probably mobile. Most systems are mobile nowadays. They can take it to the border of, Belarus and launch it.
Okay.
In which case, they're going to be there a lot quicker.
All right, John, what are your thoughts on this map and all the hullabaloo over this taking us to the verge of World War III?
Well, I mean, I think it's, let's just be honest. There's nothing better for the left currently in their wounded state than to saber rattle about World War III starting. The reality is, I don't know this for certain, but I would almost guarantee you that there have been many conversations between Trump and Putin at this point, whether through intermediaries or directly. I think this is a lot of, as Jeff said, much ado about nothing. It is a red herring. It's not something that I actually take seriously. Could I be wrong? Yeah, but as you pointed out in the news article, the the words that the left love to use, you know, scary and all of this stuff. It's all hyperbole because they really want you to, terrifying,
terrifying.
And, you know, Hitler and all of this other crap that they've used for years. It's a lot of people building up something to be what it's not. I mean, how many times have we seen shocking and terrifying in a news article about Donald Trump in the last decade? You know,
once or twice.
I'm not completely discounting this because this technology actually exists, but we also have this technology, and probably if you're looking at the quality of stuff that Russia makes versus the quality that we make, I would say that our stuff is better and more reliable, if I was guessing. So I'm not as worried about this. I honestly, if I was to be worried about somebody, I think I'd be more worried about China than I would be Russia at this point, because China is an actual threat that wants control of everything. I'm not 100% convinced that Putin wants world domination at this point. I just don't believe that. I think, you know, this whole thing in Ukraine, there's more to the story about this than what's been told. But that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, if you look at the 4 target cities on this, you know, Warsaw, Berlin, Paris, London, 2 of them have nukes of their own and nuclear ballistic missile submarines. So they could wipe out, and not wipe well, they could do a big chunk of wiping out Russia all by themselves if they launched on their cities. The other 2, Berlin and Warsaw, would trigger Article 5 of the NATO treaty, which would bring us into it and everybody else. I don't think Russia wants to start a war with 3 nuclear powers for something as stupid as, you know, an attack on hitting a mustering area near Kursk. Now, should we have done that? Probably not, you know, but it is what it is. Biden's a moron. But, yeah, and Putin is, you know, he's evil, but he's not stupid.
Right.
He also knows that if he waits 60 days, he can probably say, because he probably wants to get out of this war as much as anybody. He's lost over 500,000 men. God knows how many billions upon billions of dollars in you know, and it's hurting everything else. He's probably looking for a way out. And when Trump gets elected, he'll get the way out.
Yeah.
And
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
But he's going to get something. He's going to negotiate something that he wants out of the deal. And it's a win-win, because if Trump does actually end this war within a couple of days of taking office, then he's doing what he said he was going to do. And that doesn't mean he's a Russian asset. That just means he knows how to negotiate, because that's how you end wars, by the way. Like,
this war is already ended. It's already ended before he's even set foot in the White House.
Yeah.
The deal has been made.
Yes, I completely agree. That's why I said there's been conversations between him and Zelensky. There have been conversations between him and Putin. They've admitted that about Zelensky, that he's already talked to them.
Here's my prediction. Crimea stays Russian, because Crimea traditionally has been Russian. It never was Ukrainian until Nikita Khrushchev came along in the 50s and decided to give it to Ukraine. The other thing is, you're going to see the Ukrainians do their damnedest to hold on to Kursk, the area around Kursk in Russia, and they will trade that for territory in the Donbass. And Russia will end up with more territory than it did have. It'll have the Russian-speaking parts of the extreme eastern Donbass, and Russia will get the Russian people. And let's face it, Crimea is not Ukrainian. People in Crimea speak Russian. They don't speak Ukrainian. So what's going to happen is you'll see a slightly smaller Ukraine. You will see, and then there will be peace, and there will be a deal that says Ukraine will not join NATO for X decades, which is fine with me. And that was the deal we cut with them back in the 1990s, where we told Ukraine, you give up your tactical nukes, which they had, and they did, and we'll protect you, which we didn't do. But we also, at the same time, we told Russia, NATO will not expand to your borders.
Right.
But we did. The Balkans all became NATO states. And Russia, you know, it was under Yeltsin, they were in a position of weakness. They kind of bit hard, swallowed that, and said, okay. But when they started doing Ukraine, you got to understand history. Kiev, Russian Kiev, is kind of the start of Russia, not Moscow. Russian Kiev. It was a Viking colony back in the 500-600s. There's a hell of a lot of history there that we cannot wrap our minds around, but the Russians sure as hell can. And we should not poke our finger in that eye because it's going to come back to bite us. It's like, this is a very Slavic, Russian Orthodox, Ukrainian Orthodox, historical, religious thing. And we're looking at it through a lens that is 20, 30, 40 years old. They're looking at it through a lens that is 500, 600, 700, 1,200, 1,400 years old.
Well, number one, I agree on you're going to see a slightly smaller Ukraine because Trump has even mentioned that in the past. And he's discussed that apparently with both Zelensky and Putin, that those areas that have been Russian for eons, have spoke Russian for eons, they're going back to Russia. They technically were never part of Ukraine. The other part to this, here's a little bit more saber rattling from Putin here. And I'm just going to highlight these points here. So he said, the West should think carefully. They fired the medium-range hypersonic, which we already covered. The Ukraine war is going global. Russia gives warning on INF missiles. Putin says Russia has the right to strike back. And ironically enough, this proxy war that we've been fighting through the Ukraine, they absolutely have the right to defend themselves as far as Russia's concerned. S2, what's an INF missile? I've never seen that term.
Never heard of it.
Jeff, do you know what an INF missile is by chance? Yeah, you're on mute. All right. Well, anyways.
No, I don't, unless that's some mistranslation of an intermediary nuclear force. I don't know.
Well, John's an engineer, and I have a feeling he's looking up the answer right now. So I will add another comment. When Tucker Carlson went to Russia earlier this year, his meeting with Putin started with a 2-hour history lesson of Putin telling Tucker Carlson the history of Russia and the areas surrounding Russia. And at first, I think Tucker Carlson, his comment was he was kind of put off by it. But then after he told this 2-hour history of Russia, all the stuff he said after that kind of made sense to him. But you had to have that background. He said Putin was very forthright because I guess a couple times Tucker Carlson tried to move the conversation along in another direction. And Putin was like, no, you're going to get the whole history before we move on here. So
what this is, the INF is Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty.
Yeah, that's, yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and this reminds me of a conversation what I had with an Iranian once, and he was talking about their history goes back 20 centuries or 30 centuries. Ours goes back, 250 years. They have a different concept of history than we do, and I'm not saying one's better than the other or anything else, but it'd be like if someone started a country in Arkansas and says, okay, everything now begins when we started our new country. And we're like, oh, no, we've been a country for 250 years. Sorry, dude. I don't give a shit what you think. And that's kind of their thing. They talk about, even in Europe, when the whole Balkan thing was going up in, I think it was 1986, the Serbians were having a field day because it was the 500th anniversary of the Battle of Kosovo. 500 years. Now, how many Americans even know what the Battle of Kosovo was? I would say, I don't know, 0. But to them, it was a big freaking deal. And that's what kind of led to the whole, Yugoslavian disaster. We cannot ignore other people's views, opinions, impact of history just because it predates ours.
So
Okay.
I'd like to go back. I'd like to go back to the INF for a second. Just a little cursory reading upon that. Basically, this was a deal between Gorbachev and Reagan, where they banned both nations from launching their ballistic missiles at each other. However, the treaty did not apply to air or sea launched missiles. And in 2018, Trump announced that the withdrawal from that treaty because he claimed that Russia was not being compliant with that treaty. So I think that's what he's talking about is the submarine missiles where they can park a nuke right off of our shores.
Okay.
Well,
fair
and
enough.
also, so this specifically is talking about, from what I've read, is intermediate range nuclear missiles is so range of 1,000 to 5,500 kilometers, which is your intermediate range. So it's anything that's not an intercontinental ballistic missile that's nuclear. At least that's the way I'm reading it.
Nice.
87 was when it was actually introduced, but so this would apply to, you guys know, the classic like missile trucks from Russia that you always see in the
Scuds.
movies. Yeah.
Scuds.
So, yeah, those are the medium range mobile missiles. They're easier to hide, they're harder to detect. You guys want to, honestly, there's a movie, there's a Tom Clancy book, Some of All Fears, but they made a movie about it, Ben Affleck. That movie actually has a very accurate depiction of how the snap count works with the president and his cabinet and how they enter into these nuclear exchanges if things actually get to a certain DEFCON level. It's actually a very, very, a lot of historians say it's a very accurate depiction of how that works with the two-man system, how they all have their own security codes on a key card. People that think this is the stuff that The View and all of these other liberal news media wants to make you guys think is like, we don't want Donald Trump to have the nuclear codes, as if our system, the nuclear triad, is operated by a one man. And if he's a madman, he can just launch missiles at will. That's not how it works. It
That
doesn't
was
look that way
Dr.
at all.
If that was the case, Biden would have done it already.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's just so stupid that people think that we don't have,
Checks
you
and
know, we
balances.
don't have a system that to where, you know, we're not a monarchy. We don't have a king. The president does answer to us, and there are systems in place that prevent this from happening. Now we get missiles launched at us. Guess what? We're going to go right back at them.
Yeah.
Mutually
I had,
assured
well,
destruction.
again, it's Dr. Strangelove, with General Jack T. Ripper deciding to start World War III. But, I had a friend when I was in college. I was in Tucson, University of Arizona. We were surrounded by Titan II missiles, which were ICBMs with unitary 9.3 megaton warheads. They were city busters.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a friend who was a launch officer in a Titan II missile silo. And every day they went through the practice of turning the keys and doing the whole 9 yards. That was the beginning of every 24-hour shift underground. But it isn't one that they could just do it themselves. It
Right.
doesn't work that way. There's an entire process. It can go quickly if it needs to.
Yeah.
But and the whole point of the triad is if you have submarines at sea, back in those days, the Trident subs, the Ohio class, they had 18 missiles, and each missile had 18 individually targeted warheads.
Mm-hmm.
One submarine that survived could make it untenable for any country to attack us because they could wipe out basically your entire country with one sub.
Yep.
And that was the whole point, mutually assured destruction. But it wasn't someone could just kind of wake up one morning and go, I want to nuke Russia. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. It is interesting. And then, we also had post World War II, the 1950s, Strategic Air Command launched, and we flew planes globally for decades. We had planes in the air with nuclear weapons on them.
24 hours
24
a day.
hours a day. Yep.
B-52s flying with W-86 warheads and bombs.
Yep. We had B-52 before that it was a B-47, the B-36.
Yep.
The old prop / jet.
Peacemaker.
Yeah.
And then the B-1 and, I don't think the B-1s and the B-2s were up on 24/7 watch, but the B-52 sure as hell were.
Yeah. And I'm nerding out right now, Air Force veteran. So all these planes are like it's like the history of my branch of the military. So I nerd out when I see that stuff. Yeah. So
right on. So going back to these new Oreshnik hypersonic ballistic missiles, the numbers that you quoted, John, are exactly what's in this article, by the way. So 1,000 kilometers, so 620 miles approximately, to 5,500 kilometers, about 3,300 miles.
And go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
Well, this is just a list of targets in Eastern Europe, Northern Europe, and Western Europe that they can hit with these missiles. So, the ability to reach out and touch somebody that far isn't necessarily new, but this is a newer platform for Russia that, I guess this is probably the first time they've been used is against Ukraine right now.
And I would posit that there's probably more targets than there are missiles.
Yeah. They'd have to be very strategic in what they picked. I would
don't think they have thousands upon thousands of sitting around.
Well, and the real fear of hypersonics for people that don't understand, like Jeff said earlier, all missiles go hypersonic. The fear and the danger of a missile that can fly hypersonic in level flight is that it's very hard to deploy any kind of countermeasure against it.
Because it can maneuver.
Because it can maneuver and it's very fast, and speed is what kills. And there's some very interesting videos and articles about if China had effective hypersonic missiles, they could render a lot of our Navy useless within just minutes. Because what do we do when we go to war? We send a carrier group or multiple carrier groups into that war. That is the base of operations until we actually get land bases. So our Navy is very, very important to our national defense. If they can take out our carrier groups, which is the sole reason why we rule the sea, that's a tough thing. Now, do I actually think that China's technology is that good? I don't know. It'd have to be a lot better than the stuff that they send us.
Well, but
of course it is. They stole it from us.
Right.
Well, but the Russians had nuclear torpedoes in the 60s. Long-range nuclear torpedoes that could fly, that would go deep under a carrier group, and when it got underneath the aircraft carrier, they set it off. Okay, that will take out a carrier group faster than just about anything. Yeah. Even if you don't hit them, the shock wave going through the water, because the shock wave through water is much faster than a shock wave through air and causes more damage. Blow the bottoms out of the ships. But that's been around for 50, 60 years. That's not new. Low altitude hypersonics is impressive and is dangerous because it gets there quick. Yep. But then there's also limitations because lower altitude, higher drag, higher heat, less control. There's a whole number of, there's a lot of issues there.
Anybody want to comment on this claim that the Houthis could take down one of our carrier groups?
I don't know. They got a lot of homemade munitions. They literally make their own stuff out of bottle rockets.
Yeah, well, but I mean,
they get it from China or get it from Iran. Iran gets it from Russia.
I don't know the history of the person putting this up, and I'm not trying to dunk on anybody, but man, have you ever seen the avionic systems in a freaking modern fighter plane and a ship? No, that's Dude, the kind of countermeasures they have on those ships is insane. It would blow your mind. Like
they have aircraft tracking guns and all sorts of crap.
Yeah, they're like the little Gatling guns, a Sea Whiz they call them, on the sides of carriers. They will obliterate anything unless it's this is why hypersonic missiles are so dangerous, is because anything supersonic, those things just chew through. There's nothing that will last. Like, they've tried to fire missiles at those things. They practice firing missiles at those things. It does not work. And so you either have to overwhelm those things to where they run out of ammunition, or you have to be so fast that the radar can't catch it and hit it. That's just the reality of it. Like, I don't buy that a group like the Houthis could actually take down a carrier. I really don't.
Well, and I remember when the Stark was hit back in the 80s, during the Iran-Iraq war, the Iraqis actually fired a harpoon, or not a harpoon, it was a exocet, and it hit the Stark. And the Stark was a small ship, but it didn't go down. And I was actually talking to a Navy guy once, and that we still had battleships then. And I said, what would happen if a exocet hit the USS Iowa? And the guy just laughed and goes, "It scorched the paint." Because big ships have thick armor. And now our aircraft carriers don't have the armor that our World War II battleships did, but they rarely go down because of, you can cause damage and everything else. In World War II, was it the Yorktown took huge damage and within a few hours was recovering and launching aircraft. So these systems are not that vulnerable.
Well,
unless you're going to use a nuke.
On top of that, though, all the technology that I've seen that the Houthis have is pretty low-grade stuff. They have rockets. They don't have missiles. Everything that they've lobbed at our naval vessels, we've intercepted in the air and taken them out. And this person wants to know why don't we send aircraft carriers there? Because the threat's not big enough. That's why.
Yeah,
and the ships that we have there can more than handle it. Plus, we've got a shitload of bases in the area to dispatch planes from. There's no need to send a carrier group to fight off the Houthis, because they're like a tribe with an average IQ of 70, and that's no joke. Look it up. Yemen has the lowest IQ of any country in the world. They have an average IQ of 70. So, that's who we're up against.
And if we really wanted to just say, okay, let's delete the Houthis, we would say, okay, IDF, go in there and delete the Houthis.
Right.
Well, the Saudis would do it. They don't like the Houthis. We could launch from Saudi air bases and wipe them out.
Yeah. So let's move on. Go ahead, John. All right. Well, we'll move along.
Well, the IDF I was just looking at an article on this because I was interested in it. The IDF has actually denied that these missiles have capability of hypersonic flight. And honestly, the IDF is pretty well informed of all of its enemies in the areas. So, I just don't think. Yeah.
Anyways, moving along with the theme of, the verge of World War III and not, the Houthis and Yemen and whatnot. This is a really interesting article. It's long. I'm not going to read it, but I want to draw attention to it that it's in the brief for tonight's episode. You can go to patreon.com/survival dispatch, sign up as a free member, and you'll get all of our briefs. And this essentially goes through what we have, what the Chinese have, and what the Russians have as far as space is concerned, which thank God Trump started Space Force. Otherwise, we would have probably been way, way behind on this stuff. But this gets into some pretty interesting stuff as far as tactics and strategies that we know the Russians have, that we know the Chinese have, and some open source intel on what we have. The only reason I threw this in here is because I wanted to encourage our followers. If you want to know more on this, we've got a link. It's a great study. It's too long to go through, but what it does draw attention to is just how sophisticated things are and what's happening in outer space. And just to put a fine point on it, if someone were to take out our military satellites, we can't direct our ICBMs towards targets anymore. We can't even, the new ones that, what are they called? The AC, what are they? ACTMs or whatever that we gave the Ukraine that you're on mute, Jeff.
ATACMs. ATACMs.
Yeah. Even they require, satellite guidance, which I think is a huge mistake, by the way, sending those missiles to Ukraine. That's a big FU to Putin. And I think I'm with Jeff on this, that the Democrats are trying to, leave a really, really bad situation to Donald Trump coming into it. What they don't know is, or they fail to recognize and give credit for, is Trump has a good relationship with Putin from the perspective of being a counterbalance, not buddy like he's a Russian asset. Putin respects Trump, and he knows that if he cuts a deal with Trump, Trump will stand by. Whereas this Obama stuff, look at what happened in Lebanon not too long ago. And Anthony Blinken and Lloyd Austin were pissed off because Netanyahu didn't tell them about the plans that they had, and they went ahead and bombed southern Lebanon. And Netanyahu turned around and said, because I can't trust you guys. You would have told the enemy what we were doing. And this whole administration's been a gong show since they were installed. And, thank God we got Trump coming back in. But I'll get off of that one. And I think we're ready to switch gears into a little bit of, we're not quite ready to switch gears. I'm all excited about the Tom Homan stuff that we've got coming up tonight, because Tom has been burning up the news circuit, but that's chapter 2 of tonight's broadcast. We're still in chapter 1, but it was still interesting to see Tom Homan weigh in here that Russia right now is openly conducting these nuclear drills. We've got France now, in addition to us, and the UK authorizing Ukraine to use, these interregional and intercontinental ballistic missiles and aiming them at Russia. These guys are just, this is my question, and I'll go to you first, Jeff. Why are they trying to provoke Putin like this? Not Obama's admin, Biden's admin, but why are the Europeans so working so hard to try and aggravate and get Putin to get us into a full-blown third world war here?
That's one I really can't figure out, because Putin is not threatening Europe proper. He really isn't. He's not going after even Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia. He's not going after the Baltic states. He's not going after Finland, who had been neutral until they joined NATO, or Sweden, who had been neutral until they joined NATO. I don't know if they need a distraction from all the crap that's happening at home, or they are just so scared of him as the boogeyman. I just don't get it, because economically, Europe is so much bigger than Russia, even though Russia is geographically is a huge country, but most of it is just tundra and woods. I just don't know if it's their reason to exist.
I want to go to component. Go ahead, Esther.
Yeah, there's a component that is missing from this conversation, and that component is the real reason why Putin went to war with Ukraine in the first place. It really had nothing to do with Ukraine and their politics. What it had everything to do was the fact that the biolabs that were within proximity of Russia's border basically stood up and said, hey, we're putting biolabs there at your border. It wasn't about NATO expansion. It was about those biolabs, because those biolabs were producing things that were more dangerous as far as biological chemical warfare agents that could be used against Russia at that point. So where I see this whole thing going is that Putin has been taking ground and taking ground and taking ground. And to your point, Jeff, I also believe that we're going to see a smaller Ukraine, and those biolabs were going to get destroyed once this war is called off and Putin has control over those regions, and those biolabs can be legally destroyed on that soil.
So interesting you would touch on chemical warfare. After a few more tabs here that we're going to throw up on screen is an article on how widespread Russia's use of chemical weapons is around the world that most people aren't aware of. Number one. Number two, Mac is still on this Houthi thing in the Yemenis. Iran hasn't given the Houthis tribes anything that could take down any serious ships of ours. We have intercepted every single thing that they fired at us. We've shot them down in the air. They are not a legitimate threat. There is no need for an aircraft carrier contingent to fight off the Houthis. So we're going to get off that subject. And
there's a difference. There's a difference between rockets and missiles too. So.
Huge, and that's what they've been shooting is shitty little rockets, not full-blown missiles. Anyway,
you have to have, as you pointed out earlier, you have to have and with most missiles, you have to have satellite guidance. Guess what they don't have? Satellites.
Well, that was my next rhetorical question. How many satellites does Iran have up there? How about zero? They don't.
No, they have spy satellites. They've launched a couple. They do not have GPS or that kind of stuff. But GPS doesn't discriminate. If you can use GPS to guide a missile, whether it's a U.S. missile or a Russian missile. And then there's the Glosnov system, the Russian system, which they probably do have access to.
Possibly, but I just did a quick look up on this, and it says that Iran has 3 low orbit satellites.
But do they have access to other networks? The Russians have a GPS rival. They probably have access to that.
Yeah, even with 3 low orbiting satellites, you still can't even do triangulation. That would be another method rather than using GPS. So even with that, you need a minimum of 8 missiles, or pardon me, 8 satellites to be able to do triangulation.
Yeah, but that's satellites they control. If the Russians have given them access to their satellites, especially their navigation satellites, they can do the same.
Or China, or China.
Or China, exactly. We're not the only show in town.
So moving on from there, this is a short video showing Russia actually conducting nuclear drills.
Внимание, расчет, получен приказ. Есть приказ. Дублирую приказ на пусковые установки. Готовиться к совместным действиям. Совместным действиям готов. Проконтролировать правильность набора. Набор уверен. Внимание. Пуск. Есть пуск.
Who was it earlier that said the truck-mounted missiles?
That was me.
Yeah.
That was me.
So I actually did a little bit of reading on that video before we came online, and that is supposedly this new Arrochnik missile system right there. So it's mobile for sure. Move on from there. So this is
I would say just one comment. That is actually a really cool camo pattern. Just a comment. It's actually a really cool camo pattern.
All right. So I have been unable to substantiate this claim here and want to know if you guys had heard anything. Putin, UK is in the war now. I haven't seen anything official come from Putin or Putin's office to that effect. The Daily Record's kind of like the National Enquirer in Great Britain and is known for some hyperbole. Can any of the three of you confirm that Putin actually made this quote?
No, but it wouldn't surprise me because the British, what we did with the ATACMS, they did with the Storm Shadow. They basically said to Ukraine, yeah, you can launch these into Russian territory, which they had restricted just like we had. So if Putin said, okay, if you're allowing them to hit our sites, you're in the war now. Yeah, I could see that.
So
it's just hyperbole at this point.
Jeff, while you're speaking, let's talk about this, because this was the article that I was alluding to with regards to Russia using chemical weapons around the globe. It's a pretty fascinating article, to be honest with you. There's a claim here that as of December last year, there's at least 4,300 times that we're aware of that they've used chemicals against Ukraine and other areas around the world. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, this is kind of an area you have a fair bit of knowledge on as far as anthrax and those sort of things are concerned.
Most of Russia's use of chemical weapons in the last few years have been for assassinations of dissidents.
Okay.
They have not used it on large-scale battlefield situations, and the reason why probably is because once you do, it's detectable, verifiable. You take soil samples, you find Novichok, chemicals in it, and then you're in violation of the Chemical Weapons Treaty. I take this with a huge grain of salt that if they were using Novichok in the battlefield, you would have tens of thousands of dead Ukrainians that you could do forensics on, that you could do biopsies, that you could do chemical analysis of their blood and prove it. We haven't seen that, and I again, it's right up there with calling Trump Hitler. Is he Hitler? No. Do they have the capability? Absolutely, they have developed some of the most deadly. Well, there's Novichok right there. Some of the most deadly chemical weapon nerve agents in the world, but they're detectable. This is not something you can hide readily. So if they were using it, yeah. Now, might they be using other quote unquote chemical agents? You can use, if you technically under the law, I don't think tear gas is a chemical agent. There are vomiting agents that do nothing more than to make you vomit. And what they used to do is they'd hit you with a vomiting agent so that you would take off your gas mask to vomit.
Right.
Then they'd hit you with a nerve agent or a blister agent or something else that would kill you. You come up with a defense, we come up with a counter to it. If they were using massive amounts of chemical weapons in a battlefield situation, we'd know about it.
Fair enough. S2, now you bounce back in again. Want to get your quick thoughts on Russia and chemical weapons?
I'm pretty sure that at this point they're more worried about them being used against them. I don't really have any comments to make on them using chemical weapons. I don't have much experience in that area.
Okay, fair enough. John, have you got any information on the Russians?
I don't. I was actually looking up because I don't know how to pronounce this. I'll show this real quick, but Germany mobilizing troops, and apparently Germany is mobilizing troops. 800,000 NATO troops over the fears of World War III. This was 2 days ago. All-out war in Europe, and this is from Express US. I don't know this news organization. It was just one of the first full articles that popped up about it. A lot of troops get mobilized as a precautionary measure. I will tell you that, hands down. Having been in the military for 12 years, you get mobilized, you get rotated out. So this does not necessarily mean that you're going to war. It just means that maybe there's a heightened level of alertness due to the fact that our dementia-riddled president told them that they could use the missiles that we gave them. And let's not mince words about that. This is a clear attempt to gum up the works for Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
That's all that this is. They got their ass beat by this guy. Decisively, too big to rig. They could not beat him by rigging elections. They couldn't even beat him by shooting at him. So now what are they going to do? They're going to try and kill a bunch of people in a war to try and keep him from enacting his policies. That's how terrified and that's how willing they are to do this stuff. Do not mistake these people that are controlling this stuff are evil, and they don't care how many people die.
Yeah, very true. So Jeff, I don't know if you had a chance to go through the brief at all.
Yeah.
But here's a short video regarding North Korean troops joining the Russian troops. I'm going to play the short video and then I'm going to pivot to the next article. And there's an interesting point on the next article as far as comments you've made this evening already.
Now, there hasn't been, and I don't know if you've seen this, but there have been North Korean troops on loan to Russia. So there's an alliance that's formed between North Korea and Russia. There are North Korean troops that have been moved in and around Ukraine. I don't know if they've actually seen combat yet. There is an alliance going on there. Now, we haven't, and NATO hasn't made any kind of reaction to that I have seen. Could be totally wrong, but haven't seen it. So there's a little bit of escalation on both sides right now.
Okay, so this website claims that they essentially traded what you were just suggesting. Maybe Iran could get access to Russians, technology. And that's what this is essentially saying, is that the Russians traded access to their air defense systems in return for North Korean troops helping in South Korea, or pardon me, in the Ukraine.
Well, sure. Everything's a tit for tat, a quid pro quo. North Korea has been a Russian and Chinese client state since shortly after World War II. That's why all their tanks start with T. T-55, T-60, T-66, T-72s. They use Russian and Chinese technology, and most of Chinese technology up to a point is Russian technology. And they only have two ways to access the rest of the world short of ships, and that's they have a common border with Russia and they have a common border with China. So if Russia says, if North Korea goes, yeah, we need an air defense system, and Russia says, we'll sell it to you, but you don't have cash, but we'll take a battalion or a brigade or a division of troops. And North Korea has been very open in the fact they don't give a rat's ass about the people. They put them into a wood chipper for money. So it absolutely believable.
Yeah,
because North Korea can't pay cash. Russia wants cash. If they can't have cash, they'll take troops.
This report here says that they sent 10,000 troops. I've read in several other places that claim it's 12,000 troops. But at the end of the day, it's not a massive number, but it's a pretty respectable number. That's a lot of people. Yeah. John, your comments on North Korea sending troops to Russia?
It's an interesting development that, I don't know. Obviously, nobody knows North Korea's military capabilities that well. I know that they've had some terrible blunders just because they are completely cut off from the rest of the world. But I don't know. It's an interesting. Are they a part of the alliance that's trying to create the new world currency? They
BRICS.
aren't one of them.
Yeah.
BRICS. Yeah. I didn't think they were. So that is interesting. But it would make sense that they would align with that if that was a true thing, because all of the countries have something in common. They hate us. So
they haven't fought a war since the 50s.
Right. Well, technically we've been at war with them since.
Well, technically, but they haven't been in a shooting war since the 1950s. So it's been over 70 years.
Yeah, I don't know.
I wouldn't trust their combat capabilities.
Correct. I don't think that they've had a chance to really do any kind of military operations, especially like for people that don't know, like we conduct drills and war games with other countries just about on a yearly basis, whether it be naval or anything. We do that kind of stuff. That is something that is regularly done to test capabilities and see what's going on. Typically allies, but yeah, that's the way it goes. I don't think North Korea has been involved in any of those kind of things with their whatever allies they have.
If you want someone to tell you how to fly a MiG-17, they're the guys.
I hear that is the cutting edge of aircraft. I hear that will actually destroy an F-22 in like 3 seconds. So
yes,
So we're going to take a short break for a word from our sponsor. But before we do that, I love this meme of Kim Jong-un seeing Elon together with Trump. He got new rocket, man.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good as well. All right, we will be right back in just a second. Necessity truly is the mother of all invention. And there's so many successes like yours where the product didn't exist, the company didn't exist, and you had to invent it yourself to fill that void.
What we provided, even at the time when we started CCW Safe, it was really better than what most officers were getting through their unions or departments. And you mentioned earlier about competitors. I fully believe that whatever, all of our competitors are going to do exactly what they say they're going to do. It's just we do it a little different. We're not an insurance company or a critical response team. We're really the only one in the industry that has a dedicated critical response team like we have. And, that first 48 hours is so important to lock down. So we just do things differently.
So just a quick comment on that. I had Mike on Survival Dispatch News last week, and we're not in the business of hurting other people's businesses, which is why we don't mention the competitors in that market as far as CCW Safe is concerned. But what I can tell you is that, number one, it is illegal for an insurance company to pay you benefits if you broke the law. And 95% of criminal charges are pled out. So when you get to that final stage, if you're in a citizen-involved shooting and your attorney says, look, the DA is offering this lesser charge or time served, something to that effect, a misdemeanor instead of a felony, I recommend that you take the plea deal. As soon as you take the plea deal, you're now guilty of breaking the law, which means that the insurance company who paid for your defense and, any subject matter experts for witnesses, et cetera, they have to claw it back from you. So if you have self-defense coverage from somebody else, look through the fine print and look for clawback clauses and recoupment clauses because they've sold you an insurance policy. CCW Safe, they have a captive insurance policy on the company that protects them against losses. You don't have an insurance policy. You get member benefits. And that's why I took 18 months before I finally signed Survival Dispatch up to be a partner with somebody in the self-defense stuff again. So anyway, moving on from there, we're going to pivot away from World War III. And the first video I've got to share here is a couple minutes of one lie after another that MSNBC has reported as fact, which, by the way, there's a rumor going around that Elon Musk is going to buy MSNBC and turn it into a news outlet. Imagine that.
That was reported by the Babylon Bee.
100% pants on fire.
The Havana syndrome, headaches, and a loud noise. Clearly acts of aggression, acts of war.
Scientists say the sounds were crickets.
The Havana syndrome. Our enemies might be weaponizing technology, beaming something to hurt people's brains.
The claims are scientifically implausible.
Donald Trump to now investigate a conspiracy theory about COVID coming from a lab in Wuhan.
This theory needs to be investigated, which is what President Biden is doing.
Hunter Biden's laptop reveals emails.
We shouldn't look at it as anything other than a Russian disinformation operation.
The Hunter Biden laptop material is genuine.
The murder of a police officer, Officer Brian Sicknick, was killed in the line of duty. They beat a Capitol police officer to death.
Officer Sicknick died of natural causes.
The Steele dossier. It may be dirty, but it ain't fake.
Obviously, the Steele dossier is discredited by far, actually.
I mean, this is the lunatic response to what is a very rational, evidence-based, fact-based investigation.
FBI pleads guilty to doctoring email.
What the report shows is something that won't be surprising to people that have spent a lot of time in the federal government.
The report left former officials aghast.
The FBI is exonerated today.
It doesn't vindicate anyone at the FBI who touched this.
They are all absolved of any wrongdoing.
The activities we found here don't vindicate anybody.
The Trump administration cleared peaceful Black Lives Matter protesters so the president could take a photo in front of a church.
We did not find evidence that federal agents used CS gas. The DC.
And the video goes on longer than that. And if you want to watch the whole video, go to patreon.com/survival dispatch, sign up for free. you can get the brief that we're going off right now. It has all the links and the stories in it. But I've seen some really interesting numbers lately from different people. I'm going to go to you first on this, John. So something like about 50% of Americans under the age of 30 get their news from people like us, like citizen journalism. They don't go to the mainstream media or anything like that. And as the ages go up, there's more trust in the mainstream media. But even when you take the whole picture and look at it, Jeff and I were just discussing this last week, the support for the mainstream media is now lower than the support for Congress. And that's kind of like the ultimate insult. And what's interesting is, you know, on election night, when we were doing our broadcast and we had access to Edison, we had access to all of the data. We were announcing results an hour before the mainstream media. So any advantage that the mainstream media had in the past, I think, is gone. And I got one comment to make, and then I want to get your opinion on the citizen journalism stuff, John. I personally think that Trump took the popular vote because his team looked at where the audiences are, and there's been a quantum shift. So in 2016 and 2020, he catered, you know, he bowed to the mainstream media, did all the interviews, 60 minutes, even though they butchered the interviews and, you know, edited them to make them look bad. He did virtually no stuff with the mainstream media this time. And yet he did podcasts with people who have a lot of influence, but aren't necessarily well known outside of their niche, right? And I think that's only going to get bigger and bigger. But I think it was a brilliant move on the part of his strategist to go where the audience is. We can't win against the mainstream media. Nobody trusts the mainstream media. Their numbers have fallen off a cliff. Let's go to Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, you know, so on and so on.
Well, that's true. And his strategist, at least what he says, was his 17-year-old son, Barron. I'm not joking. He actually said that. He said that Barron was telling me, I need to go on these podcasts. These are what I need to go see. I need to go do this. And yes, it is a brilliant move. And I do think he would have won the Electoral College no matter what. But I think what put him over the top with the popular vote, I mean, you can watch reaction videos of MSNBC, CBS, NBC on election night where they were doing their polling of people who were in line, and they were saying, yeah, I saw him on the Joe Rogan podcast, so I decided I was going to vote for him. That had a ton of impact. And because of that, it changed the outcome of the popular vote, and it gave him really a step. So this is what Donald Trump has done, especially in 2016 and this last election. He activated a voter base that they were not anticipating he activate. In the first one, it was non-college educated white voters, low propensity, and he has actually turned them into high propensity voted because they have voted for him the last 3 elections. This last election, he targeted under 40-year-old men. Well, where do they get their news from? They get their news from Joe Rogan, from Tucker Carlson, all of these people that have massive audiences that are in the culture. I mean, you saw what happened post-election at the UFC fight. He has that culture. That culture is, and honestly, I think it's the future of the Republican Party and the conservative movement, is we have to get in with these young men who are disillusioned. They've been called racist most of their lives. If you think about it, these guys that are in their mid-20s, the vast majority of their lives, they've been called racists. And they're like, I'm not a racist. What are you talking about? Well, I'm going to go to the people that don't call me racist. I actually had this thought earlier because Donald Trump is not traditionally like a uber conservative man. He's just not. You look at his history, but he's a deal maker. And he keeps his promises. So the supporters that came out, I don't think that, and I think you would actually bear this out, and much to my chagrin, because I am extremely pro-life. I don't think Donald Trump is extremely pro-life, but I do think that he does the bidding of the people that put him in power. So who were his staunchest supporters in 2016? People that wanted abortion overturned. They wanted Roe v. Wade overturned. So he said, okay, these are the people that are supporting me. I'm going to give them what they want. And then you see a shift. He's saying, what do my supporters want now? That's why he taps into these things like immigration. He taps into the things that his supporters want, and then he makes promises and he follows through with them. It's a novel idea for a politician to do this because none of them do that. And so they don't understand that he really understands. He is constantly taking the pulse of culture and seeing where it's at. That's why he went on these podcasts, because it is the wave of the future. Honestly, I've heard rumors that he's going to allow some of these podcasts into the press briefing rooms.
I saw
Brilliant idea. Have Megyn Kelly in on these things. Have all of these, because she's got a huge podcast too. But you have all of these people come in, and they are the press. I think legacy media is just going to die a horrible death over the next 4 years. You're already seeing it. CNN's laying off tons of people. MSNBC is for sale. That he has really defeated a lot of legacy media, and it's because of clips like you just played, Chris. Because they just lie and lie and lie and lie, and they never, ever own up to that. It's just like a couple of days after the election, did they say, well, maybe we shouldn't have went so crazy on the chop your penis off and become a woman? Maybe we shouldn't have. No, they're defending it still.
Yep.
They're defending the craziness. They're doubling down on all of the insanity that lost them this last election, and as opposed to saying, maybe we should be a little introspective. Maybe we should actually think, what lost us this election? All I can say is keep doing it. Please keep doing it, because you're just going to push more people to our side.
So there's another interesting piece to this, and I'm not sure if you were on the podcast. Maybe Jeff was. We were discussing it. Is RFK has very vocally said that he's going to end advertising by Big Pharma on mainstream media, right? Okay, so
that's
during an election
thing, isn't it?
Well, during an election year, like we just had, 50% of their revenue is from Big Pharma. In a non-election year, 70% of their income comes from Big Pharma. So when you kill that revenue stream, plus the fact that people are flocking to independent journalists like Survival Dispatch News, the writing's on the wall. These guys have a horse and buggy, and we've now got the car on scene, and it's the same thing. Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I was going to say, we've talked about this before. There's nothing wrong with advertising your product, but when you're advertising a product that requires a licensed physician to write you a prescription, you're not advertising to the patient, you're advertising to the doctor. Okay, I sit at home and I'm, maybe we turn on the TV in the day, which we rarely do, but there's just ad after ad after ad for all these, bullshit, pharmaceutical products, which require doctor's prescription. Doctors aren't sitting at home at 2 p.m. watching Judge Judy or something to hear these advertisements. What these and the people who do hear them can't write their prescriptions. So what it is money given to the networks to basically say, don't investigate us. Don't question us. Don't look at what we're doing, 60 Minutes, Dateline 2020, leave us alone. It's hush money. They are paying millions, if not billions of dollars to the TV networks to say, don't criticize us, because if you do, we'll cut off your revenue stream.
Yeah, sorry, I had to deal with a troll over here on.
Oh, I got you. But that's all it is.
Okay, S2, I want to get your thoughts on the rise of citizen journalism and the impending death of the mainstream media.
Yeah, I've been watching this evolution go on for about the last 5 years now, and as I've said before, I've said it that the advertising for pharmaceutical companies, pharmaceuticals, and one particular company in general, who I shall not name here because of other reasons, but that advertising exploded. And just from my efforts alone and the things that I've been doing and being able to provide open source intelligence to numerous sources that have gotten the word out, I think has become the most effective form of journalism at this point in time for secrets that have been held from the world, even not just Americans, but the world. There's a lot of people that are tapping into foreign open source intelligence also that makes its way here, and they're openly sharing it. So, I said from day one back in 2020 that we were going to watch these people sink in a burning ship, and I'm pretty sure that's where they're going right now. I mean, they have nothing left but theatrics, drama, and terror. That's all they are. They're just they openly purport to push terrorism on the American people, and that's all they do.
Yep, I don't disagree. Jeff, I wanted to just make another comment on your comments on Big Pharma. Big Pharma reportedly spends well over $1 billion a month on TV advertising. And there are some people whose position is it's not so much to advertise these drugs so that people see the advertisements and go to their doctor and ask their doctor to prescribe it to them, so much as it is to wield control over the mainstream media. So in other words, it's their way of saying, look, we're giving you over $1 billion a month to all you TV networks, and you are going to take this position or this position or this position, which supports their interests, the Big Pharma's interests. And that's not just drugs, right? That's on who they want to win, a Senate seat, House of Representatives, county council, all that stuff even. Yeah. And that it's a power play on their part more so than anything else. And I think that's believable.
Well, I don't know. I'm old, so I remember old stuff. Back in the 80s, NBC, I think it was Dateline or 22, whatever their 60 Minutes equivalent was.
I think it was Dateline back then.
Dateline. They did a thing about the side saddle gas tanks on Chevy trucks and how they were a danger, that if you got hit from the side in a car accident, that they could explode. Well, they staged these collisions, and what they didn't tell people during the time was that they put flares under the vehicles to guarantee that they would burst into flames. And it was a big deal, and it was a Chevy pickup, and it really hurt their sales. Well, Chevy, General Motors sued and said, wait a minute, this is bullshit. And I think NBC had, they lost a lot of money over it, but they lost a lot of advertising revenue because GM said, we're not going to put any ads for any cars on NBC. Well, car ads are huge money for television. And it was embarrassing for NBC. And if it's not NBC, I apologize, but I'm pretty sure it was NBC. But it was embarrassing for them, and it just killed them revenue-wise. And I think there was a message there that said, okay, one, don't fake the news, but two, don't piss off your advertisers. The people who
didn't mainstream media recently have to retract a piece about Fruit Loops?
Yeah, well, it was New York Times, because RFK said, why do Fruit Loops in Canada have so many fewer ingredients than Fruit Loops in the United States? And New York Times says, well, no, that's not true. But although they, in Canada, they use natural colors. In the US, they use red dye number this and yellow dye number that and all that. And also this other totally, Frankenstein chemical for preservatives. So they basically said, yes, RFK is full of shit, except that he's not.
He's right.
Because everything he said was 100% correct. Yeah, but, because, New York Times is part of some big media group, and how much advertising do they get from Kellogg's or Post or whoever the hell makes Fruit Loops? And to be honest, I love Fruit Loops. One of my favorite sweetened cereals as a kid growing up. That and Captain Crunch, man, it turned your mouth to suede. But
oh my God,
I would eat it every day, all day if my parents would have let me.
You kill me. All right. So the next video that I've got and again, I don't think that this is going to save CNN, but they've got this guy who's been on recently quite a bit. Scott Jennings is his name.
He's brilliant.
And he's been good, but I think it's too little too late. I mean, the numbers for CNN and MSNBC, like how many people they get to view, is just, there are nights where they're, whatever their big show is for, that night during the week gets 30,000 viewers. Like it's literally fallen off a cliff. But this video here is good. Everyone with Scott Jennings seems to be pretty decent.
Inflation will go up. One of the reasons inflation has been lower in the last few years is that we've had a lot more immigration.
Did it go up when Obama deported 5 million people? I think concerns about this are overblown. We've got 1.6 million people with deportation orders right now and another violent population. I mean, I don't think that alone is going to drive up the cost of groceries in the short term, and people want it to happen.
You don't think mass deportations will affect the labor force or agriculture industry?
Or building houses to bring down the
even
cost
if
of
you're
goods?
pro it, you have to consider that. I mean,
I think if you exit people that have already have deportation orders from the court, and you exit people who are violent criminals, that is in no way, shape, or form going to hurt the economy, but it just might make people feel a little safer about
way
their
more
community.
than that.
And obviously, Trump trusts him. And I do think Bessent has the ability to translate MAGA, to Wall Street audiences and to financial audiences. And that's a good thing. I mean, we live in a communications world. The policies are one thing, but then you have to tell people what you're doing, why you're doing it, and why it's good for the country. I mean, a lot of what happens, I think, in the financial world is based on confidence. Do we have confidence in what the government is doing? Do we have confidence in the president and his team? This is obviously a confidence pick. And so I think it'll be good. I think in the first term, Treasury was one of his most successful cabinets. Set up to be another round of that in the second go around, which is vital for him since he's an economic kind of guy.
Yeah, and
hold on. There were plenty of people who were around that, and plenty of things in that are basic standard Republican stuff, like cutting the size of the federal government, reducing the size of bureaucracy. I mean, don't threaten me with a good time. I hope he does it, and I hope he's aggressive about it. And I mean, and so this is not groundbreaking or stuff. This is what Republicans have wanted for a very long time. And Vaught is very skilled. He did a great job the first time around. I like that he's coming back. He knows, he knows where all the levers and knobs are, and he's going to hopefully execute on this agenda that not just Donald Trump has said he wants, that Republicans have said they've wanted for decades.
All right, John, since you just rejoined us here, your thoughts?
Yeah, sorry, everybody. I have children upstairs, and sometimes it sounds like they're murdering each other. So, anyways, it's very interesting to watch these talking heads who have never worked a manual labor job in their freaking lives talk about how they actually know how this stuff works. This is not how this works, and history shows us a different story. I mean, I get so tired of this. I mean, look what Milei is doing in South America right now. Their GDP has gone up like 800% or something ridiculous like that, because he's deregulating the bureaucracy. He is getting rid of the bureaucracy. He is cutting all of this government waste. And yes, it can operate way more efficiently. And then people actually have more money, because guess what? We're not being taxed as much because the government doesn't need as much money, because there are less people working in it. It's a trickle down type thing. And for these people on these news organizations and to think that they are the arbiters of knowing everything, and they ignore the success that Trump had last time. He's going to do the same thing. Economically and foreign policy were his two strongest things in his first term. And because of that, it's going to be the same in this next term. And they realize that. That's why they're trying to get us in World War III, guys. Is because they realize that. I was telling this to a friend of mine yesterday at work. They're terrified of Trump's success, because what does that success do? He's going to crown somebody the likes of, whether it be J.D. Vance or someone else in the MAGA world, he is going to basically crown them Prince of MAGA, and he's going to put all of his support behind them. If the economy is rip-roaring in 2028, guess what? It's not going to happen. The Democrats aren't going to win. And then you've got possibly 2 terms of another younger version of Trump. And you're going to end up with 12 years of this if they continue on these policies. That's what they're scared of. And that's why they're trying to grasp at all these straws. That's why they're trying to scare and fearmonger that people are going to, inflation's going to go up. What do you think inflation's been the last 4 years, you dummy?
It's been
every single. I mean, it's insanity for them to actually sit there and like, well, inflation's down because of this. No, it's not down. It's down from the high point that it was 3 months ago or whatever, or 2 years ago, whenever that was.
It's not even down. It's not even that. That's still overly optimistic. When they compare year over year, and last year was already 30,
it's
31%
compounding.
over
It's compounding. It's compounding.
Yeah. I mean, depending on whose numbers you want to believe, since Biden was installed, inflation on food is somewhere between 21 and 41% year over year. So just cut it right in the middle. 31% year over year compounded inflation. Okay. So when they give you year over year, quarter by quarter numbers, it's adding on top. So anyway, yeah, it's a topic that gets me fired up, this inflation side. Anybody who thinks there's no inflation has had their brain turned to mush.
To me, it is just what we talked about with why the media is failing. Why is the media failing? Because they're lying to us. They're lying to us left and right.
So
they're
But that's the key, John. No, that's the key. So if Elon hadn't have bought X, we would not have had as large of a platform, meaning Americans in general, to get the truth out there.
Yep.
And X right now is by far the biggest social media platform that gets the most views, the most visits, the most coverage. And if you take that away, we would have been relegated to Rumble, Cloud Hub, Telegram, those sort of services. And they're valuable services, don't get me wrong, but they don't have that massive reach. So we basically took away. There's a quote from Joseph Stalin, and I can't remember exactly what it says, so I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said, whoever is in control of, disseminating information controls the country. End of story. And they've had that, and now they don't. And they don't have it because Elon opening up X, there's still some woke code under the hood. It's not a perfect situation, but it's a gazillion times better than what it would have been if he hadn't bought X.
Yep. Well, and you look at this kind of stuff. This goes all the way back to the advent of a radio in everybody's home before television. FDR actually understood this. That's why he did his radio addresses. He understood that. That's also why he did 12 terms, as even though he was the closest we ever had to a dictator actually taking office and controlling, because he died in office and immediately they said, "Oh, we can't have a president have more than 2 terms. This is dangerous." Yeah. And passed a law that basically kept him from having more than 2 terms, any president from having more than 2 terms. But he understood, just like the reason JFK won, along with some probably shaky voting things in Chicago, was because he actually carried himself on television better. He looked better on TV. You look at the debate between Nixon and Kennedy. The people that listened to it on the radio thought that Nixon won. The people that watched it on TV thought overwhelmingly that JFK won because of the way that that's carried. You have to understand how to disseminate information. And what has happened, I think, here recently, and you're absolutely right. A little side note on X, when Elon bought it, it was 65-35 liberal to or liberal to conservative. There were only 35% of the platform was conservative. It is now 50-50. It is actually very, very close to what we see in the country. It's a good picture. It's balanced, and that has happened because we've been allowed, and I actually think it's going to move more to the right over time, because we're going to be able to express the truth better, and we're going to be able to express the actual facts without fear of being silenced or muzzled. And that's just going to lend itself to more people coming to our side.
Yeah.
Because if you present the truth to people, if they're not an absolute controlled person, they will eventually turn to the correct direction.
Not to haggle, but it's nothing's moving to the right. It's the nutcases moving further to the left.
Yeah, they're all going to blue sky.
We're in the same spot that we've been in for years. And now all of a sudden we're considered far right-wing extremists because the left has moved so far off the scale that, you know, it's just, if you kept a static, you know, graph, you would see where people lied and where they've gone. I mean, I saw a meme the other day ago that said the Democrats won the election in 2024, and it showed Trump, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., and there was one other person in there who all in the past were Democrats. So, you know, either way, this is an interesting prediction. I can't pronounce the handle, but Acro Cash something now. Biden dies less than 48 hours after January 20th. Wouldn't that be crazy? All right, everybody's had a chance to weigh in on the media. So the next topic, you know, first chapter of tonight, World War III. Second chapter is kind of a grab bag. So the next one that we have up, and I'll go to S2 first and then Jeff, so you all get a chance to speak, is New York City women are under attack due to the ultra progressive sanctuary state laws. Enough is enough. All right, so S2, when I get your thoughts on people like Alvin Bragg, you know, these district attorneys who are funded by George Soros, letting criminals go, arresting, you know, somebody gets arrested like an illegal immigrant for, you know, punching somebody, they let them back out the door almost immediately. General Val, he sent me an email a few months ago. I've mentioned it before on our show, you know, posing the rhetorical question of why is nobody charged Alvin Bragg and all these other shitbag DAs who have broken the law? So that's the question for you, S2. What are your thoughts on this? What stops this? What stops the DAs from breaking the law like this?
Rule of law returning. I'll use an example. Up in Pennsylvania, there was a meeting, and this is kind of related, but kind of not related from a subject matter standpoint. Up in Pennsylvania, there was a county commission up there who were counting votes past the election illegally. And they sat at an open forum meeting and told citizens in that meeting that, well, we don't have to follow the rules because there's no effective rule of law right now. Right. And it's never been a problem with finding a way to first follow the process, which is first you file a criminal complaint, and then you have to have a DA that's going to take it up. Well, when you have all of the DAs that are in favor of these things that they're doing, they're basically in control if any criminal complaint gets answered. So the only way to stop this is to get those DAs out of those positions. And this can be done several different ways. One is going to be by the vote. But unfortunately, in some states, you don't get to choose who your DA is. They're appointed. So we have to look at that situation and change that situation all around. That's one of the reasons why this is happening mostly in blue cities, because those DAs aren't elected; they're appointed. And it's by design for that. So the only way to stop this is to bring back the rule of law and to put new laws into place. But in order to do that, you're going to have to get control of the legislatures of these states and get them all on the same sheet of music. That's the only way I see this stopping.
Yeah, well said, S2. Great answer. And I've got some stuff coming up, Tom Homan articles, where he speaks to the solution that you alluded to. Jeff, your thoughts on these rogue DAs?
Well, what's ironic is one of Alvin Bragg's assistant DAs was attacked in the last couple of days.
That's right.
And ironically, contrary to previous precedent, that person was not given bail, is still in jail, and is facing serious criminal charges. So it's when it's you or me, so what? But when it's one of my own, or one of my people, we're gonna throw the book at them, and that should be eye-opening to the people of New York. That when it's an average citizen being attacked and abused and almost raped by some psychopath, I think he was an illegal alien. Don't quote me on that. I may be wrong. But then they throw the book at him when it's one of his people. But if it's you or me or our daughters, our wives, our grandmothers, you got to take his story into account. Oh, he was a poor, distraught person. Bullshit. You break the law, you break the law. And it doesn't, and that is the whole point. You apply the law evenly. Don't care what, if you're male or female, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, it doesn't matter. If you break the law, you get the same treatment. Doesn't frickin' matter who you are, what pronouns you use, none of that. And we see it all the time when we have these mass shootings and they turn out to be some transgender screwed up person, that gets swept away. If it's some relatively normal heterosexual person, it's on the front page for the next 6 weeks.
Careful. In the past week, we've gotten 2 strikes on Facebook and 1 strike on YouTube.
Right. I'm sorry. I didn't use the V word, or I'm trying not to, but my point is they are very selective in who they prosecute and who they don't.
And by the way,
it should not be that way.
By the way, I'm joking. As the owner of Survival Dispatch, pardon my French, I don't really give a fuck.
You may be joking, but it's not. Doesn't make it less true.
No, it doesn't. But as the owners, Survival Dispatch, I don't give a fuck what big tech does. We will find a way to get the word out, and we curtail our language a couple ways by not mentioning certain drugs and stuff. But I'm more interested in the fight than backing down from the fight. Yeah. It's the only way we're going to change this stuff. So next article I want to bring up here, just a quick one, is a quote from one of the Rothschilds. I can't remember what his first name is, but this essentially says, just when globalism thought it had it all figured out, an orange-tinted wild card throws their game off course. Trump is on a mission to shake up globalism. What do you think? Are we witnessing the end of the New World Order, or just a really bad plot twist? Donald Trump is trying to destroy the New World Order. Yep.
I know what his first name is. Dickhead.
Yeah, pretty much. So what are your thoughts on Dickhead's comment? S2, go ahead.
So it's like everything else. Everything ebbs and flows, and that's been my observation throughout my entire life. Is just when you think there's an end to something, it's not an end; it's a regrouping. And this is kind of going to go into some of the other subject matter that we've got on the brief tonight as well. Is that what's been going on? Is we haven't seen the kind of bloodshed in the streets and the civil war and everything that everybody's been saying was going to happen as a result of the election. And what we're seeing now is a regrouping, and that's more than likely what's going to happen. Yes, they are threatening the whatever you want to call it, the New World Order, whatever. But that in itself just becomes a regrouping period where they're going to continue trying because it's what they do. It's what they've always done. They've done it with communism. Communism didn't go away. It just went under the covers for a while. And now we're looking at it again, full blown right in our country. So that's kind of what I think about it. I don't think anything of that nature of evil is ever going to die completely. I think it's just going to go back underground and regroup and say, hey guys, let's try this plan again at another time because it didn't work this time.
Yeah, fair enough. John, your thoughts on Rothschild, and then Jeff.
Well, it's all I can say is here. Let's end globalism. Let's end that destructive, satanic construct that is, and that's why, in my opinion, why evil never dies is because it's tied to the king of evil, and
human nature.
He will always. Well, it's not just human nature. That's definitely a part of it, but human nature came from the deal with the devil, and the devil is always going to be seeking to destroy things. And that's, as a man of faith, as a Christian, I believe that we are always fighting. When you're fighting evil, and there's evil, there's stupidity, there are useful idiots, as the communists like to call them. I don't classify useful idiots as evil, but I do classify the people that are pulling the strings behind them evil. And that's the difference. Do I think every Democrat is just an evil pedophile person? Nope. I have some very good friends that are Democrats. Now, I don't actually think that they're the most intelligent people in the world, or they're at least not informing themselves. However, the people that are behind all of this stuff, the people that are behind trying to control your lives, they are evil, and they need to be eradicated. And that's not a call to violence. They need to be eradicated in the battlefield of ideas, in the battlefield of debate, because they're so easy to beat on that battlefield. And when you start to present the truth, why do you think they try and suppress our speech? Because they know their ideas are bad. They know they can't actually win in a fair fight. They can't win in a debate, because every time that they allow themselves to do that, they get destroyed. And that's why they don't want to actually debate. They just want to control. And they want to control us, our speech, because we are the enemy. We are the biggest danger to globalism, because we speak and we speak the truth, and they realize, oh crap, we can't defeat this. We've got to silence them.
Yep. Jeff, do you want to speak towards the Rothschilds before we move on?
Yeah, just briefly. Okay, first, the New World Order is not new.
No.
It's not, and it is not orderly. It is a group of people wanting to control. Okay, nothing new there. Okay, that's been around since as long as there have been two guys got together and said, hey, if we take charge of this. And it is evil, because for them to control, they have to take away your freedom. The last thing they want is people thinking for themselves.
Yeah.
Everybody should look at everything skeptically. If someone, I don't care if it's Donald Trump or Kamala Harris, if they tell you something, you really need to do this, it's good for you, take a step back, take a breath, and go, is it really? Okay, let me look at this objectively. Be a skeptic. Skeptics are rarely surprised and almost never disappointed. So don't trust these people. They have their own interests at heart, not yours. And remember that.
Yeah. Well said, Jeff. Very, very true. Okay, so we're going to pivot to the next topic here on de-arresting. And I'm not even going to attempt to explain this, because this is in S2's wheelhouse. S2, what is de-arresting, and why is it important at this particular point in time?
So de-arresting is a tactic that has been used in the past. Particularly, I can use an example of the riots in 2020. When police were detaining members of Antifa or BLM at the beginning of that ruckus, they would instantly have a plan in place that they would execute, that where they would actually, so while the cops are distracted trying to arrest this person, they would have a mob literally rush the police officers that were in the process of arresting a person, thereby allowing that person to escape. Why this is important right now is because the battlefield that's coming is going to be over the deportation of illegals. They're actively training people on the other side right now to do this. And that's exactly what's going to happen is they're going back to their old tactics of abolishing ICE, and this is exactly what they're going to do. So this is one tactic that I've learned that's what they're planning on doing, and that's why it's important right now.
Okay, fair enough. But thanks. I appreciate you bringing this up, by the way, so we could share it tonight. John or Jeff, do you have anything you want to add to this? I wasn't familiar with de-arresting until S2 shared it in our Intel group.
No, I don't have.
Well, it's right up there with trying to keep people from being arrested for breaking the law. And what you need to do is rearrest and then arrest all the people de-arrested. Put all their asses in jail.
Well, that's one of the things that they talk about in these articles that I shared today was the legalities of doing that and what the consequences would be for doing it. But the thing is that, as I've said, a lot of these movements haven't gone away. They've lost some of their steam and their momentum, so they've gone back to regrouping right now. And I don't see them. I kind of share this opinion with Mike Shelby, actually, that I don't see them having the momentum to be able to make this happen. So this is going to be happening it's probably going to be happening in blue cities and very isolated incidences. I don't think they're going to be able to pull this off.
Well, and I think if conservatives get smart and say, okay, if you're a criminal alien, you want to be in Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York City, Chicago, or Denver, and they all go there. Eventually, those cities are going to go, yeah, we don't want all these criminals here, so we're going to rethink our whole, the whole sanctuary city bullshit.
Yeah. Okay, so we've still got maybe 10 more tabs to go through. I'm going to pick up the pace just a little bit here. And I'm a little ambivalent, by the way, with Pam Bondi. And of course, she was our attorney general here in Florida. Why I say I'm ambivalent is because she's a strong proponent of red flag laws.
Mm-hmm.
And red flag laws have been routinely used over and over again for, nefarious purposes. I vehemently disagree with them. But let's hear what CNN thinks of Pam Bondi.
When Republicans take back the White House, you know what's going to happen? The Department of Justice, the prosecutors will be prosecuted, the bad ones. The investigators will be investigated because the deep state, last term for President Trump, they were hiding in the shadows. But now they have a spotlight on them and they can all be investigated.
The question is whether or not actions follow the rhetoric. And if she does, in fact, do something that we've not seen in modern times with head of the Department of Justice, which is use that very powerful agency to go after a president's political opponent. That obviously is not what we're accustomed to. It's not what we've seen in the past. It's quite arguably not what the Department of Justice is there to do. But again, I'm looking not really so much at the rhetoric, but at the actions.
Okay, so, and one more quick post, and then we'll discuss Pam Bondi. Breaking: Trump-nominated Attorney General Pam Bondi has expressed her support for releasing many names in the Jeffrey Epstein documents, asserting that anyone fighting to keep their identity private has no legal basis to do so. So some people, What's that mean? Some people, all the people.
Yep.
We want all the people's names that were engaged in child sexual abuse and trafficking, whether it's Epstein, Diddy, or anybody else. Not some of the names, all of the names. And to be a high caliber attorney like her, she's used to choosing her words carefully. She said many and not all for some reason. And again, I am not really happy with a couple of Trump's picks. I guess we'll see what happens. But her and the new Surgeon General, who is in favor of masking and shutting everybody down, making them stay home, and get all the other stuff, which got us a strike this week.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I will cut her some slack because she was pro all that crap initially, and then later backtracked and said, okay, what we're seeing is what they promised ain't happening. And she really pushed back. She became an anti to what she was initially. And okay, as a health professional, you tend to believe your colleagues. And if they say X, you say, okay, it's X. And then with your own eyes, you say, turns out it's really Y. She did come out hard against a lot of that stuff in 2022. She was pro all the issues in 2020, but by 2022, she had backed up and said, okay, the shit isn't adding up. What they said isn't happening. What they claim isn't true. And she really she kind of flipped. And I'll give her the benefit of the doubt on that one.
Fair enough.
She did it at a time when it was not politically advantageous to do that.
Fair enough. John first, then S2, and we've still got 8 tabs to get through here before we wrap up with the conflicted question. So we'll try to keep it somewhat brief for the next 8. Go ahead.
Yeah. Specifically to Pam Bondi, I have the same apprehensions as you do, Chris. Anybody that's willing to sacrifice our uninfringible right to bear arms and to keep and bear arms is somebody that I'm going to look at with a heavy dose of scrutiny, and that doesn't matter who it is. I mean, I was vocal against Donald Trump banning bump stocks, and that made its way through the courts. It's honestly, I did a video for our YouTube a couple of weeks ago talking about, yes, this natural reciprocity is great. With Trump, we kind of had a mixed bag on the Second Amendment. So I have a problem with that. We need to be strong on the Second Amendment because the left is going to be strongly against it. So we have to be strong. But as a prosecutor, I think as a attorney, she was attorney general in Florida, right? Is that right? Yeah. Yep. So I think she did overall a good job, but there are a couple of things that I question. One thing that this certainly reveals is that Trump is not afraid of powerful women, as Mark Cuban loves to say. But I think that the proof will be in the pudding with her, and we'll see what direction she goes. I don't think she'll have any issue with confirmation. One other thing. Lindsey Graham praised her, and anybody that Lindsey Graham praises, I like my spidey sense goes crazy when Lindsey Graham's like, "Oh, this is a great pick."
No, it's even worse than that. Mitt Romney endorsed her.
Okay, so she's a communist. No, I'm just kidding.
So anyway,
well, yeah,
John, I said that exact same thing. If Lindsey Graham is for it, I'm not for it. I think with her, I think it was like a lot of other people out there initially when the shock and awe of that particular period of time. I think what period of time I'm talking about, 2021. I think there was a lot of people out there that initially were, okay, we're in a panic right now. We need to take measures to do whatever we can do to get through this. But I also saw a lot of people out there that eventually said, hey, you know what? Something's not adding up here. They had a healthy dose of skepticism thrown at them, as Jeff calls it. And I think that's a lot of that's what's happened here. I do believe that people's opinions and attitudes can be changed by giving them a healthy dose of fact. And then once the facts weigh out, then they can come back and they can say, okay, I was wrong. But that is one of the things that I've not heard anybody say. It's what they do, it's not what they say. So by virtue of her actions, I think she may be one of those that had a change of heart based on the facts that were presented to her.
Fair enough. And actually, my count was off. I just realized that there were 3 funny posts that we want to share at the end. So we still got a handful to get through. This next one here doesn't really require a whole lot of conversing because I think we're all on the same page. But so Texas has just passed a law basically saying that any agency that has investments in China are required to divest them immediately. So that's something I could get behind. What I would like to see is it go the other way as well, for them to say, look, China can't come in and buy these huge tracts of land in America, especially big rural areas that are right next to some of our military bases, which I think is absolute insanity. But again, I think we're all on the same page there. So let's move to some of the stuff I've really been looking forward to. So Tom Homan, if anybody doesn't know who he is, he was Trump's former director of ICE, 34-year law enforcement veteran, very, very vocal with regards to conducting mass deportations and going after the criminals in particular. The 2 lines of effort, going after the criminals and finding the children, the underage children who've been lost into the world of sex trafficking. The DHS wants to say that it's 325,000. JJ Carroll tells us it's way over 500,000. And JJ's been right on the money with his stuff. And I'm going to just go through a few Tom Homan ones, and then we can talk about them. So this is something that we just discussed, kind of, sort of. These rogue DAs and city officials and county officials trying to stymie efforts to deport illegals. Number one, they've got blood on their hands multiple times for this shit. The TDA gang member who killed Lake and Riley should have never been let back in the country, should have never been given a free plane ticket from New York to Georgia. I mean, these rogue cities and counties, they've got to be held to task. And thank God Tom Homan has promised that these people, these city and county officials who have been essentially breaking the law by not going after, putting ICE detainers on people, not allowing ICE to get these criminals out of our country. Tom Homan says in a nutshell, basically, what city or county would be upset that we're coming to take convicted criminals, 13,000 of them convicted murderers, by the way, and removing them from your community? How does that hurt your economy? How does that hurt your city? It's absolute insanity. So speaking of which, so here's the mayor of Denver who has had to start walking back his stuff, by the way. So I'm going to play this video, and I think I've got 1 or 2 more, and then we'll open it up to discussion.
Thank you all so much for being here this morning. I'm here to talk a little bit about the devastating impact of the failure of Republican leadership in Congress this week to pass comprehensive immigration change, and the impact that will have on both city budgets and on services that we can provide for newcomers in the city. The second is we will start to have to greenlight a set of hard decisions about budget reductions across the city to meet those costs that we know will continue to arrive. We want to talk about 2 of those today. While they're the first steps, they unfortunately will not be the last and may not be the hardest. This is a plan for shared sacrifice. And so in terms of our first step on city cuts, we are announcing today we will make some changes both to our services at DMV and to our services on Parks and Rec.
So this is Mike Johnson, ironically enough, his name. One of his other claims to fame is that he defunded the cops. And essentially, the past couple of days, he's been saying, this article captures it again, it's in the brief if you want to go download it, that he's going to deploy 50,000 protesters plus his entire police force to stop Tom Homan from deporting illegal aliens. And so there's another article here that's in the brief. He says it's going to be like Tiananmen Square, a showdown, kind of like the tank guy was, where they're going to stand up and not allow any of this stuff to happen. And I was looking for an article quickly. I'll look for it while everybody else is talking. But he's basically now been forced to kind of back down from this stance, because Tom Homan has said, if you do that, I'm coming for you and I'm going to put you in jail. Full stop. Because this is a criminal offense to block ICE from deporting illegals. And they've got away with it up until now, just like these rogue DAs have got away with breaking the law. And it's about time somebody came along and enforced law. We don't need new laws. We need the laws enforced. And these clowns like that Mike Johnson guy, they don't have a right to stop us from deporting people who do not belong here. John, you first, then Jeff, then S2.
I got to make one quick comical comment on this. The sign language guys that are always standing next to these politicians crack me up, because they look like they got some kind of soundtrack going on. He's doing all these moves and facial. Sorry, just a side note. They always crack me up. But yeah, so these guys deserve to be exposed, and they deserve everything bad that they get for the stuff that they've done with illegal immigrants. Coddling, giving them funds that should go to American citizens is gross. It's disgusting, and it needs to stop. I live in Illinois, and our governor just came out with this statement that he's going to protect and keep anybody from taking away our illegal immigrants. What? This is the same state, by the way, that a judge ruled a couple of months ago that they can have guns that we're actually not allowed to have or buy in Illinois. That's the people that we are up against.
Yeah.
They don't care about us. They never have. And I think that really what you're seeing is that's getting more and more exposed to more and more of the normie norms, the people that have had their head in the sand for the last 8 years, 10 years, 2 decades. And they're starting to realize, oh, well, maybe these people don't actually care about us, but they deserve every bit of the bad things that they get. And they should be rooted out and voted out at the soonest possible moment.
Well, they need to be arrested. They need to be charged and convicted of breaking the law, and they need to pay the penalty for that.
And I would say this too. Every one of these. So this is the George Soros model of getting all of these DAs elected in these uber blue districts. St. Louis is another one and because of that, every one of these people, you have to make examples. Honestly, I think if you made about a dozen examples across the country, a lot of the others just stop this crap. Like, put these people behind bars for breaking the law and for treasonous activity, because that's what it really is. If you are putting people from other countries who broke the law to get into this country, if you are putting them in front of the American people, the people that pay your salary, the people that you are actually mandated by the Constitution to take care of, then you deserve to go to prison for treason. Because you don't care about this country.
Yeah. Hold on a second. We got that asshole I oppose the current thing is running his dick sucker again. All right. So before you go, Jeff, and S2, I actually found the video I was looking for of Mike Johnson backtracking. So I'm going to play it so that you guys have a chance to comment on it. Let me just get it pulled up here.
I want to just ask you very specifically, are you open to sending Denver police officers to the county line to stop federal forces or National Guardsmen from other states from coming into Denver?
We have no plan to do that. And we really hope that we don't ever have to do that. I think
no plan,
but
are you open to?
What we're going to do right now is, it's hard to keep an eye on what the future president actually plans to do and what the proposal actually is.
It sounds to me like you're walking back the comments from a couple days ago saying that you would be willing to send Denver police officers. Do you regret making those comments and now getting questions like this?
Would I have taken it back if I could? Yes, I probably wouldn't have used that image because I don't. That's an image I hope we can avoid. What I was trying to say is this is an outcome I hope we can avoid in this country. I think none of us want that.
You talk about civil disobedience. You've mentioned that a couple of times now. Would you be willing to participate in those as the—
Just to be clear, that's not what he said. If you want to go watch the videos, he was, essentially enraged, banging his fists and stuff. I'm going to stop this. They're not going to come into my city and remove anybody. We're going to fight. Yeah, okay.
Mayor of Denver, would you be willing to go out and protest these things?
I would. If I believe that our residents are having their rights violated, if I think things are happening that are illegal or immoral or un-American in our city, I would certainly protest it. And I would expect other residents to do the same.
Trump's new border czar, Tom Homan, has said that he is willing to arrest leaders like yourself for standing in the way of these policies that they want to enact. Would you be willing to go to jail for these things?
Yeah, I'm not afraid of that. And I'm also not seeking that. I think the goal is we want to be able to negotiate with reasonable people how to solve hard problems.
You would encourage people to protest?
I think we're going to look at every option, but yeah, I don't think that there are, I talked to some high school kids this week who were terrified about this. I don't think those kids are going to stand there and watch 3 of their classmates get pulled out of a history class. We have the 27 stand by and do nothing. I don't think that's what Denverites or Americans would do in this context at all.
What is your line where you say, yes, I support these deportations, and no, I don't support these other ones?
Yeah, I think our line is clear. We think if you are a violent criminal that is committing serious crimes like murder or rape in Denver, you should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law and you should be deported.
All right, Jeff. You totally backtracked, but love to hear your thoughts still.
Well, he needs to be the first one arrested. They need to go in, and if the police get in the way or anything else, say, well, the police are part of the city of Denver. You're the head of the city of Denver. You're getting arrested. And then immediately ship his ass to Leavenworth, Kansas, because it'd be a federal thing, and say, oh, yeah, by the way, we found a judge, no bail for you, and park his ass in Leavenworth and say, here's a sledgehammer. I want you to turn those big rocks into little rocks. Watch how quick they backtrack. These people who do this never have to pay the price for their decisions. And someone needs to put that on them. This is the law. This is federal law, which supersedes state law. And if you get in the way of that, you're breaking the law, and we're going to throw your ass in the clink. Period. Look at these people who went 2 years in prison for trespassing. When you're in violation of federal immigration law, they should throw his ass in jail. And the next person that steps up and does the same thing, arrest them too. And just and guarantee you, the cops on the street, they're going to go, I'm not going to die on this hill. Yeah, you want to arrest them, arrest them. They're not going to get in the way. Yeah. It's these idiot liberal freaking politicians who think they're above the law. And screw them. Put them in jail.
Well, Tom Homan is just the guy. Right place, right time, right guy. He is the guy who will stand up this. S2, your thoughts on these activist city and county officials?
Well, I think he really needs to take a good, strong look at the county sheriffs too. I can almost bet that the sheriffs are not down for this. That's number one. It's illegal to harbor an illegal alien. That's rule number 2. That's a federal crime, and it does have a very stiff penalty for every occurrence. So if you have 500 illegal aliens in there and the penalty for that is 5 years in prison, guess what? That's 500 years in prison. So you need to take a look at that. And secondly, then he can be charged with obstruction for each single instance of that. And then thirdly, he also needs to consider that I think the day that happens and they come into that town to take those illegals out of there, I could just about bet these 50,000 cops that he says he's going to put out there to blockade it, I have a funny feeling they're probably all going to call in sick that day.
Yeah, good point. The valid point for sure. So we got through all this serious news. not including chapter 3, which I've kicked all those links to tomorrow night's broadcast just because we're going long here. But the first one, wait, I got 3 funny ones lined up here. So what's this one first?
Don't have a uterus, you don't get to make a decision.
Did you just tell me I don't have a uterus?
It will never happen to you. It will never happen to you. Are you telling me that you have a uterus?
Well, you could tell me I don't if I claimed it. My pronouns are uterus owner male.
So if anybody who didn't quite catch the context there, he's a pro-lifer, and that is not a new video. That's been around the block a few times. It's funny. This next one, I haven't watched it. It came up on my monitor that's up above me here, and it looks interesting. So this guy smokes the world's hottest pepper from a bong and instantly regrets all of his life choices.
See that?
Oh, Lord.
Oh. So this is my bowl. Oh, my God.
Don't do it.
The chunk off of this.
Is that a ghost pepper?
Stuff it in there. Ooh, it's nice and oily.
Or a boot?
I'm just going to see what happens.
Looks like a premium red hot.
Long with this whole thing.
Does not look like a smart decision.
I don't know what's going to happen.
You're going to die.
You only live once. And this is the first time I've ever been scared to do something on YouTube.
This is not the way to debut it, dude.
It's bad enough when it's in your mouth, and but at least you can drink milk or water to try and dial it down a bit. But in your lungs,
I told you guys I was going out with a bang this year.
Yes.
Retirement's a bitch.
Oh, he's taking another hit.
That ain't gonna help.
Nope.
He just found out what it's like to be in boot camp in the CS room.
Yeah. Okay, he just failed the IQ test.
Okay, that's enough of that.
That is a Carolina Reaper, by the way.
All right.
Oh,
so
Jesus.
have you guys seen this? This is Florida man in a wheelchair. So it's this is pretty fucking funny, actually.
Well, take me. Hey, chill. I just hit you again. What the you do about it?
Time we are seeing body camera video when Miami-Dade police say they were assaulted by a quadriplegic man. A case so unusual, even the judge at first appearance seems surprised.
I have truly never seen a case like this.
It happened May 1st. Police were called to the Southwest Miami-Dade home of Brian Amastha, also known as El Valiente. His stage is performing music. According to the report, Amastha and his mother, seen here in red, were involved in an argument. But when mom is put in handcuffs, this happens.
Nah, bro, don't fucking do that.
Brian,
No.
hey, stop hitting me with the chair, Brian.
Stop doing
That's a
that.
battery on
You just said.
When we interviewed Amastha back then, he told us this.
They claimed that I hit them with my wheelchair.
Did you?
I absolutely did not.
The report stated that you spit at an officer.
Right. So I suffer from acid reflux, so I normally spit. And I spat like the totally different direction.
But this is the video.
You want to listen or not?
Bro.
Amastha also told us he felt humiliated during his arrest.
Are you laughing at me, bro?
Because he was separated from his motorized wheelchair, which he says was damaged when it was put on a flatbed. You see one officer appearing to text someone, joking that they were going to put him on the tow truck. Officers later seen inspecting their legs. Amastha charged with 2 counts of battery on a law enforcement officer.
Only in Florida.
And we are told that corrections did not have a transport van to transport Amasa with his wheelchair, and that's why officers on scene called fire rescue to take him and called a tow truck to take the chair. We're told that there's another hearing in this case scheduled right here for tomorrow. We're in Miami. I'm Janine Stanwood.
Is that Donald Trump in the background?
leave it up to Florida man to.
So yeah, Florida man / Timmy from South Park.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, oh my
Timmy!
God. That
Timmy.
Thank you.
There's so much crap in the news cycle these days that I like this pattern we're getting into where we finish with some funny videos.
I love the fact that he's also a freaking rapper. That's
right.
Gold. Just gold.
That's too funny. All right. So we're at the stage of the episode where we discuss homework for y'all in the audience, things that you can do in light of what we've been discussing tonight. So for the first chapter of content that we covered, reach out to your congressional reps and senators, urging them to demand that the Biden admin stand down, stop getting us into the third world war. We just elected Donald Trump on his peace portion of his platform, and none of us want World War III. The only people who want World War III are the globalists and the military-industrial complex. So,
hey, speak for yourself. I shorted world peace on the market. So.
All right. And then the other one would be to reach out to your city and county councils and demand that rogue DAs and other officials are held accountable for breaking the law. And hopefully Tom Homan's group's going to do that. And by the way, if you go to patreon.com/survival dispatch, sign up for free, you can download the brief, and there's a link to govtrack.us where you can find out contact details for everybody in Congress on both sides. John first, then Jeff, then S2. Any other suggestions for homework for our audience?
Stay informed. We're all, we're entering the realm of citizen journalism, as we talked about earlier. So that means everybody can be a journalist. So educate yourself. If you see something happening, educate people around you. This is really the way the country started. It's a beautiful thing because the original journalists in this country were citizen journalists. So don't shy away from that. You have the ability to record and document things on your phones. Do it, and educate people around you. We have a great open forum on X that you guys can get on and share this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Good time for a shameless plug, by the way. If you become a paying member, Survival Dispatch Insider, we give you access to our Signal chat group, encrypted chat group, and S2, and everybody's been killing it in there with tons of intel. I'm amazed at the amount of messages that are in there. I mean, some days there's 1,000 messages in one day, and which is a pretty awesome exchange of information. Jeff, your thoughts on advice for our audience, homework for our audience?
Well, yeah, the whole be your own journalist thing. We saw it during Helene that you had somebody commenting on what was going on in Helene, and they were in Britain. Okay, I would much rather trust, average Joe from Kansas about what's going on in Kansas than some professional journalist,
right.
10,000 miles away. Journalism is the easiest degree to get for a reason, and I kid you not.
Yeah,
and journalism is not objective anymore. It is very subjective, and therefore it is useless. It is just somebody pontificating about what they feel, and facts don't give a shit about your feelings.
Yep, that is absolutely correct. Before you go, S2, I just wanted to mention something I forgot to put in the brief. Is another thing that y'all can do is if something comes to your attention that's volatile and you don't want to go public with it, you can bring it to us, and I'm just going to give this to you right now. So on paper, I'm an employee of Todd Callender's legal team. And if you reach out to me and I say these words, I say, my advice is that you don't say anything without an attorney present. As soon as I say that in our conversation, you are now protected by attorney-client privilege, and anything you tell me can't be shared with anybody else unless you explicitly give me permission to do it. point being is that you can come to me or Todd, so Survival Dispatch News or Todd Calendar's Truth Be Told, and be protected with the client attorney privilege. S2?
Well, the first thing I would say is fear not. I don't think, in spite of all of the warmongering and the terrorism and everything that the current journalism channels do, is nothing to be afraid of. They're simply trying to stir people's emotions up and get them all riled up and upset about things. So be clear. I believe that Donald J. Trump has this thing in order already. And I believe that in day one, there will be at least by day 5, there will be a deal that's already been in place that's going to be announced, and this will stop. Secondly, as everybody else has said, just be aware of what's going on around you. And if people get in your face about, oh, you're not for saving Ukraine, you explain to them exactly why you're not for Ukraine. People want to get all emotional about things. Give them facts. They're probably not going to listen because they've already got their minds made up, but still there may be that one person that you've planted that seed in that says, hey, you know what? I was wrong about this. Maybe I need to look into this a little more, because frankly, that's what's happened throughout this whole period of time for the last 4 years. Everybody's value systems have had to change. Everybody's set of facts that they thought they knew were true has changed, because the fact that there have been people like us out here that have been telling people what we've been screaming from the rooftops for 20 or 30 years. So there you go.
That's too. So at the peak tonight between Rumble, X, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook, we were 1,200 concurrent viewers. Right this minute, we're still sitting around 750. So just a quick reminder, please mash the like button before you leave. It helps with the algorithm. And we're, severely suppressed on some platforms because we've spoken the truth on certain subjects. And if I mention them, we'll end up with another strike. But suffice it to say, the only way we're going to get around the suppression is if you like our videos, comment on them. And that way, hopefully, it'll get us out from the suppression. The suppression essentially means that people don't get notifications that we've got a video going live or that a video has been published, and not recommending our videos to other people. And it's really hard to grow without that. So mashing the like button, more important than it seems. It's something we need you all to do. So we will wrap up on the conflicted question of the day. The easiest way, by the way.
Since Mike is not here, am I delegated for this?
Yeah, if you want, you're welcome to do it. And I just want to mention this. So we are on the conspiracy deck now. So we blew through all of the questions in the New World series. So there's none left in here. We're into this one, and then I've still got 8 more decks for us to go through. So we're good for quite a while. So take it away, Stu.
Okay. The easiest way to gain control of a population is to carry out acts of terror. The public will clamor for such laws if their personal security is threatened. That is a quote by Joseph Stalin. Do you believe governments sometimes orchestrate violence in order to control their citizens through fear? Give an example of a recent event that would fit this category. And Chris, we'll start with you. We'll go to John, and then we'll go to Jeff, and then me. So,
well,
Chris,
recent, yeah, for sure. I mean, recent in terms of the grand scheme of things, I would just go back to 9/11. So after 9/11, they scared the hell out of people. And I think that, Al Qaeda and Obama, or Osama bin Laden, I should say, they were laughing their asses off at how, the little old ladies are being patted down and all the restrictions being put in place. And you know what? They went way over the top, and they're still gone over the top, because then we ended up with the Patriot Act. Then we ended up with the FISA courts and warrants. And now we have a situation where it was just renewed this year. And our rep here in Volusia Flagler counties, 2 counties, and here in Florida, Michael Waltz, we voted for him a couple times. We did not vote for him this time around because he voted against requiring warrants, FISA warrants, for the feds to spy on all of us as private citizens but requires FISA warrants to spy on members of Congress. He has become part of the swamp, and I told his staff that I will use my platform to educate people on a repeated basis that he is a swamp creature. So yeah, my example is 9/11. They absolutely, it was a terrible thing that happened, but they've used it as a massive power grab. And when it came up for renewal this year, the Patriot Act FISA stuff, they voted against our liberties as Americans, and they're just dirty. That's my example.
Okay, John?
Yeah, I'll go more recent even. COVID, the entire year 2020 was a power grab, and the orchestrated.
Be careful what you say on this topic. We can't afford another YouTube strike right now.
The orchestrated violence from the St. George Floyd incident that happened nationwide was completely orchestrated. Following that up with that fateful day in early January, and all of the orchestrated FBI and all of that stuff that was on the ground in that. And I'm speaking very vaguely, but you guys know what I'm talking about. All of that stuff was orchestrated for control. It was orchestrated to make people be afraid and to enact a lot more structures within the government to control us. And thankfully, it seems like a lot of people woke up when those things happen. And maybe we've got a chance to turn this thing around, but we cannot stop. We cannot rest on our laurels because we just had a massive victory a few weeks ago. Now is the time to fight. Fight like hell.
S2, before you go, we have 256 people still logged on our main YouTube channel and 14 likes. I mean, I can't implore you enough. Please mash the like button.
Takes a second, guys. Just mash it. It helps us out. If you appreciate our content, do it.
And it costs you nothing. Sorry, S2, go ahead.
Actually, this was for Jeff. It's Jeff's turn.
Oh,
okay. I'm going to go even older school. I'm going to look at Waco. Okay, not a fan of David Koresh or any of those things, but that was engineered by the ATF because they had a budget hearing coming up, and they needed a big splashy raid so they could go to Congress and say, "Give us more money." Well, it blew up in their faces because it turns out the people they were attacking shot back. And several ATF agents, I'm not saying it was good that they were shot, believe me, because they were just following their orders. But it was completely engineered from the get-go to make it a bigger deal than it ever should have been. Okay, HTG, Ruby Ridge, same sort of deal. Mm-hmm. And it was all budget driven. They were trying to get more money out of Congress by making a big splashy raid that never had to happen. And how many people died as a result of that on both sides, on law enforcement side, and then I actually felt sorry for the FBI. I was in Texas when this happened. I worked with the FBI every day. ATF basically handed this shit sandwich to the FBI and said, "Here, fix it." And it turned into a disaster on multiple levels. But again, they weren't doing the right thing. They sacrificed those people for their budget. And if you don't think that's criminal, then you're evil.
Two quick things. Aaron James asked me to refresh the page, Jeremy Taylor asked me to refresh our main YouTube channel. We actually have 264 likes over there. Good job. Thank you. I just did the same thing on Rumble. We still have 213 people on Rumble and only 56 thumbs up. Usually our Rumble audience does a great job. So people on Rumble, please give thumbs up. And then just a quick anecdote here. My Uncle Bob and I were having lunch about 10 minutes away from Waco when it happened. It was brutal, man. It came on the news while we were eating lunch. The old, CRT TVs mounted up in the corner of a greasy spoon. And when we left the restaurant, we could see all the smoke and everything. It was brutal. We could smell it 10 miles away.
I have a story to share. We watched that on TV. My dad, I remember he told me while that was burning, while that compound was burning, son, this is why you can never trust the government.
Yep.
And true words were never spoken. You
I
cannot
was
trust
the government at the time, and I went, "This is fucked up."
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, regardless of how, and David Koresh was a crazy person.
Yep.
Absolutely crazy. But they had no evidence to support what they were going in there for. And they were going in there to show what they could do as a government agency to try and keep themselves from getting axed by the budgeting committee. And they ended up just absolutely crapping the bed on national TV.
100%. All right, bring us home, S2.
Okay, so you guys went retro, you went kind of medium, and you went kind of recent. I'm going to go kind of in the same area of more recent. The assassination attempt on Donald Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania. Kind of a similar situation. We don't have any actual proof that the federal government was behind it. However, there were 3 presidents that were against the New World Order. That was Reagan, another one, and Donald Trump, and all 3 of them were shot. So, and then what happened immediately after that shooting? Christopher Wray got to go in front of Congress and testify about it. And what did he do when he got there? He said, "Oh yeah, by the way, can I have my $500 million that you didn't give us this time?" And then another example I'll use is the Ukraine war, which brings us to where we are, things we've discussed tonight. They have people all terrified that we're going into World War III, and it's nothing more than this to gin up support for the continuation of the forever wars. That's all I've got.
All right, good examples. We will be back tomorrow night at the same time as usual, 7 p.m. Eastern time zone. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. God bless America.